Now, do you have My Command on your list?
I have not on my list, but I've read My Command.
Okay, My Command is not on your list.
Again, it's not on my list because if you've read one of Obasanjo's books, you've practically read everything. I mean, My Watch is almost a rehash of some of the books he's done. Like Cheta said, he understands how to take the lead in this conversation.
I think there's something about My Watch that a lot of readers miss, or a lot of people miss. My Watch is not about who President Jonathan, or the character of President Jonathan, or Atiku Abubakar, and the rest of them. People like all those parts because there's a lot of gossip and all that. But I think that My Watch is important because it, to a large extent, documents the history of Nigeria.
Of
modern Nigeria. Because the life of Olusegun Obasanjo
is
the story of Olusegun Obasanjo
is the story of Nigeria.
Is the story of modern Nigeria in so many ways, So I think that readers should not miss those bits in the book. His growing up years, his years in the military, and so on and so forth, up till more recent times. People tend more to focus on those aspects where he was talking about Atiku.
And I think in his early years,
it's the same thing with a book that I'm going to ask both of you if it's on your list. I'm curious to know if it's on your list. The Accidental Public Servants by El Rufai. Most people who have read that, most people who talk about that book, talk about El Rufai's views on the most famous figures, in Nigerian politics. They want to know what he said about Atiku, what he said about Obasanjo, what he said about Obeze Kwesili or Irobadu and the rest of them. But they fail to see how El Rufai told the story of Abuja, for example. That's an important story. Nobody pays attention to that, and all that. So, like book number 3.
The Trouble with Nigeria by Chinua Achebe. And that's one of it's one of the smallest books you can find around, but that's a book that's there forever. Addresses all of these issues we've been talking about over time. The first line, very popular. The trouble with Nigeria is simply
a failure
of leadership. Yeah.
That just says it all. And of course, people will argue with Achebe. They will quarrel with some things that, while he's trying to build a united Nigeria, some of the sentiments he also expresses counter some of his arguments. But honestly, every Nigerian leader, in fact, every Nigerian ought to read that book. Because we don't hold our leaders responsible. So they don't owe us any explanation. These issues we're talking about books is because, they don't take us serious. It's not about, we're having some discussions before now. The current administration, God help them, the expectations are high. I don't know how they're going to manage it. Because, look, Nigerians are looking for a hero, they are looking for a messiah. And we're not going to find any messiah anywhere. But there are certain things about, the relationship between the citizen and the state. What are the obligations? What are the responsibilities of the state to me? Those are some of the kind of discussions we need to have. And I think in that same volume, honestly, Achebe just...
Powerful book. Cheta, is The Trouble with Nigeria on your own list?
The Trouble with Nigeria is on my long list. On my top 5, I put The Trouble with Nigeria Volume 2, which is There Was a Country. Because the truth is, There Was a Country is more or less an extension of the trouble with Nigeria. A lot of people, especially non-Igbos, tend to look at There Was a Country only from that prism of the apparent, in quotes, the apparent ethnic jingoism displayed by Achebe. It was just a simple matter of, the man knew he was dying, so it was like his final middle finger to everybody to say, I can write what I want to write. There is no holds barred. Take it, leave it. If you don't like it, go and die. Very simple. Now, the truth is this. If you detach yourself from that what looks like ethnic jingoism and read the book, it is the story of Nigeria. It doesn't matter whether you are Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, Edo, Efik, Ijo, whatever. We have all lived in the country since 1914 that has ground all of us to the ground. That's the fact. And that's the story that Achebe was trying to tell. He told it from the point of view of his own culture, which coincidentally is my shared culture as well. However, and this is very important. In that book, he began a debate. And I would like to quote Amadou Bello here. We need to understand our differences as a people so that we can actually move forward with one Nigeria. Pretending that those differences don't exist will not help us at all. We have mentality differences based on centuries of culture before the British came and forced all of us together. There's one thing that a lot of Nigerians don't even know. And I think one of the greatest crimes of any government of Nigeria was removing history from the curriculum. Because Nigeria, as it were, Nigeria was not created to be a country. Nigeria was a business transaction. Simple. The British government bought what became Nigeria from the Royal Niger Company for £845,000. End of story. So they didn't care about whether we were in there or not. They just wanted this thing to be profitable for the crowd. End of. So how can we make this business work for us? And it is when we start making that business work for us that we will find a nation.
Correct. Great book. Absolutely great book. There was a country. I've read it. I think it's one of the best books I've read on Nigeria. I think our reading culture needs to improve, not just in terms of how much do we read, but also in terms of how do we how do we analyze what is written.
I can give a practical example here. Every Saturday, I do something on Twitter called History Class, where I take one topic that I try to relate to Nigeria or a Nigerian topic itself, and within a maximum of 50 tweets, talk about it. Just for an hour. And one thing I've noticed is there's this very selective people take only the part of the conversation that suits them and discard the rest. So that blinkered vision is a big problem.
It is.
That inability to detach yourself from what you are seeing and then take a holistic view. Because it is when we approach things with a holistic view. Take for example, last weekend my history class was on the Civil War. I did that, and I mentioned that actually the first massacre of the Civil War was perpetrated by the Biafrans. We're not talking of pre-Civil War itself, of course there was the whole pogrom of 1966. We're talking of between May 30th, 1967 and January 15, 1970, the very first massacre. Colonel Mike Ivenso went to Okene and killed a lot of northern people in retaliation for what happened here. A lot of people didn't know this, and I found that many of the people who reacted to that were people of northern extraction. Then when I talked about the fact that Murtala Muhammad carried out a massacre in Asaba, many of the people who reacted were Igbos. So you found that there's this, people are just taking the one that pushes their narrative and discarding the rest. It's a very unhealthy way to discuss.
Okay, we've got quite a distance to go now. That's your third book.
Yes.
Now, what's your fourth book?
Well, let me also say that it's on my list. There was a country is on my list. And it's important to also add to what Cheta said about one guy who actually got it right for me was Tolu in his review of that book. It's Tolu Ogunleche. He said for him, that was Achebe reconciling himself with Nigeria. It wasn't so much. Of course, you could be angry about certain things. Who won't be angry about Nigeria? But exactly, everybody is. I mean, so the truth is that our story post-independence is a story of deferred expectations. It's a story of betrayal. So we don't need to, if we gloss over these things, we will not find solutions to them. And for me, honestly, as we've argued from the very beginning, Achebe only extended some arguments he's had over time, discussions that we need to continue. And so it's on my list. It's actually my number 4.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Great. So we've got 1 on both lists. Now, 1. Okay, so what's your number 5? Like
number 5, just before dawn.
No, we've got to go back to Cheta for his number 4. Okay, so that's your number 4.
My number 4 is Half of a Yellow Song Part 1. A lot of people don't know it. This book was written by Alexander Madiebo. The name is The Nigerian Revolution and the Biafran War. I would have also can I cheat a bit and twin it with something? Why we struck by Adewale Ademoye.
Oh yes, I've got that on my on my list.
Those books are important because they were written by people now not Obasanjo, people who were very major actors in not just the Civil War itself, but in the events that led up to the Civil War. Madiebo wrote the book from his own experiences. And for me, the key takeaway from that book is why I feel every Nigerian should read that book is so that you will see the human angle from somebody not just at a top level, but he also narrated the experiences of his family members who were at lower level, so that all of us can stand together and say, this kind of thing should never again happen in our country. It's that simple. Hiding from it means that it will happen again.
In fact, let me. Sorry, I just wanted to chip in something. We're talking about they don't study history anymore in school. A senior friend of mine told me there was a committee that was set up, and one of the reasons why it was struck out was because the committee set up could not agree on the version of the Nigerian Civil War to be taught in schools. You'll be shocked about that. I mean, so exactly.
Wow, but history is about teaching all. So that people are able to then, come to conclusions. Okay, fantastic. Lai, what's your fourth book? Fifth book.
Well,
fifth book.
It's Just Before Dawn by Collier Motoshaw.
Interestingly, it's well, as you know very well, the arguments around it. It's a faction between fact and fiction. But you see, he presented it's a narrative that I enjoy because he presented in a way that, I mean, like the same arguments we've been having over time. I mean, why are we where we are? I mean, how the kind of leaders we've had since independence. I mean, these are people people get into government simply for personal aggrandizement, not because they owe the Nigerian state or the Nigerian people anything. So, and in fact, when I want to tell people to read any book about Nigeria, I normally start with Just Before Dawn. And I just want them to say, look, you need to learn how to draw the line from that which is fact and that which is fiction. But then, sometimes the story of Nigeria itself is more of fiction, than truth. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great book. I absolutely love the book myself. Great book. Is that on your list?
No, it's not. Well, it's not even on my long list because I haven't read it. I've heard about it, but I haven't had the opportunity. The one I put on the list is How to Be a Nigerian by Peter Inamo.
Okay.
But in it, this book was published in 1970.
Yeah.
When you are reading it, even now, the behavioral traits
Nothing has changed.
of Nigerians in 1971 are still the same behavioral traits today. Let me just cheat and talk about the passport of Madam.
Okay, great. Well, guys, it's been fantastic having this review session with you. We could go on and on.
Yes, sir.
If I'd asked you for the top 10 or top 20, you would have come up with a list. But let's see if we can do this again some other time. Add a few more books. Thank you, Cheta, for joining us on the channel's book club. Thank you, Lai, for joining us.
Thanks, it's a pleasure. Yeah.
Nice to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope you have enjoyed today's show. Please join us for our next episode as we review some other exciting books. My name is Olayiwola Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.